The Rising Sun of Freedom, Ghana's Path to Independence, and the Awakening of a Continent. Long before colonial maps carved lines across Africa, the land now called Ghana was the heart of great African kingdoms. The Ghana Empire, Mali Empire, and later the Ashanti Empire commanded respect across the region. They had their own systems of governance, thriving trade networks, and rich cultural heritage. The people of these lands knew power and independence. But in the 15th century, that independence began to fade. European explorers and traders, starting with the Portuguese, arrived on the West African coast, lured by gold. Soon the coastlines were dotted with forts like Elmina and Cape Coast Castle, and the trade turned darker. Gold was replaced by human lives. Over centuries, millions of Africans were taken into slavery, and colonial powers, including Britain, tightened their grip. By the late 19th century, the British had consolidated control over the area, naming it the Gold Coast, a prized colonial territory. Despite foreign rule, the spirit of resistance endured. The Ashanti Wars, 1823–1900, saw fierce battles between the British and the Ashanti Kingdom. Though the British eventually won militarily, they could never crush the people's desire for self-determination. The seed of change. By the early 20th century, a new force was rising, the African intelligentsia. Western-educated elites began questioning colonial rule. Men like Dr. J.B. Dankwa, Pa Grant, and others formed organizations like the Aborigines Rights Protection Society, and later, in 1947, the United Gold Coast Convention, UGCC, demanding greater political rights. But change truly accelerated when a fiery young man named Kwame Nkrumah returned from abroad. Nkrumah had studied in the United States and Britain, absorbing the ideas of Pan-Africanism, Marxism, and nonviolent resistance. Inspired by global freedom movements and African-American leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois, he returned to the Gold Coast and joined the UGCC as General Secretary. But he was too radical for the party's conservative leadership. So in 1949, Nkrumah founded the Convention People's Party, CPP, rallying the masses with a bold and urgent cry, "Self-government now." The British colonial authorities were alarmed. They arrested Nkrumah in 1950 after a series of strikes and protests. But it backfired. He became a symbol of resistance, and even from prison his popularity soared. In 1951, the British held elections under a new constitution. The CPP won overwhelmingly. Nkrumah was released from prison and became the leader of government business, the first real African leader in the colony. The road to independence. From 1951 to 1956, Nkrumah and the CPP worked tirelessly to build national unity and demonstrate readiness for full independence. They expanded education, invested in infrastructure, and negotiated with the British. The people backed them enthusiastically. On March 6, 1957, before a crowd of thousands in Accra and with dignitaries from around the world watching, Kwame Nkrumah declared Ghana's independence. At long last, the battle has ended, and thus Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. The country was renamed Ghana, linking it to the legacy of the ancient Ghana Empire, proud, black, and free. Lighting the torch for Africa, Ghana's independence was more than a national victory. It was a continental spark. For the first time, Africans across the continent saw proof that colonial rule could be ended through unity and determination. It was a psychological turning point. Nkrumah became not just Ghana's leader, but a symbol of Pan-African hope. He invited leaders and freedom fighters from across Africa to Accra, hosting conferences and offering support to liberation movements. He proclaimed, "The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent." Across Africa, his words were heard. In the next few years, Guinea, 1958, became independent, with Nkrumah and Guinea's leader Sekou Touré forming a symbolic alliance. Nigeria 1960, Mali 1960, Congo 1960, and Senegal 1960 all followed, gaining independence. By 1963, over 30 African nations had achieved independence. Accra became a hub of anti-colonial activism. Nkrumah helped found the Organization of African Unity, OAU, in 1963, pushing for continental unity and cooperation. Challenges and legacy. But Ghana's journey after independence was not smooth. Nkrumah's vision of rapid industrialization, anti-imperialism, and Pan-Africanism led to debt and political tensions. In 1966, while on a diplomatic trip to Vietnam, he was overthrown in a military coup. Still, his dream lived on. Today, Ghana remains a beacon in African history, the first to rise, the first to show that colonialism could be broken. Streets across Africa are named after Nkrumah. Statues of him still stand, and every March 6, Ghanaians raise their red, gold and green flag with pride, symbols of their land, labor, and hope. Ghana's independence in 1957 was not the end, but the beginning. A dawn that awakened a sleeping continent, a fire that spread from Accra to the deserts of Algeria, the forests of Congo, and the mountains of Kenya, and the rest of the continent, until the whole continent was free of colonial rule.